G'day, Sally. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Yeah, really well, thanks, Grant. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Love your
Thanks.
t-shirt.
Sorry?
I love your t-shirt.
Yeah, everyone's a photographer until we go to manual. Yeah, thank you.
That's it.
I've bought that for me a few years ago, and I'm lucky it still fits. But anyway, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. Tell people who don't know who Sally Brownbill is, who you are and what you do.
Okay, sure. I think it's always good to know the background of why somebody ends up doing what they do. So I actually started life out as a commercial advertising photographer. So I trained at RMIT a long time ago. I worked in industry, did a lot of travel photography initially for a bus touring company. And then I decided I really needed to learn about the business of being a photographer. So I became an assistant to a really amazing man. And he taught me so much about life, about photography, about the business of photography. And I spent a lot of time with him. And at the end of a couple of years, he said to me, I think you need to go and see the world and then come back and start shooting. And so I took his advice and went off, and he meant 6 months, but I ended up staying away for years and years and years. And I worked in film and television and West End theatre in London predominantly. And I travelled the world, and I came back many years later. And at the end of that journey, I came back and I started shooting again, but I realised my photography was not about shooting other people's ideas.
Yeah, right.
Photography, and when you're in it, you don't realise it. Even though I loved it and I ate it and I breathed it and I lived it, I didn't want to be shooting other people's ideas. I was a bit lost. So I went back to RMIT and spoke to my lecturers, and they invited me to come and start teaching. So I started teaching photography and to photography students and also to advertising students, which started to open up my world of understanding advertising. And at the same time, a lot of friends that were photographers said to me, we heard you're not shooting anymore, but you never shut up. You've got your mouth's always on the go, hence this and my logo. And everything about photography will pay you to take our folios out. So
nice.
Work. So I started to build this huge network of design studios and advertising agencies and government departments and everybody that needed photography. And I started to gather photographers and to help them be the best that they could be then and go out and get them work. And I taught a couple of days a week, and that went for a few years, which was wonderful. And then it's moved into me moving in with another company that did what I was doing, but they were doing it for art directors and creative directors and illustrators and writers and graphic designers. Is this longer than you thought?
Oh.
Go. And so then I started to learn about the world of who employs photographers. So I was dealing with designers and art directors and getting into their headset. And that was interesting, because then I could then go back to photographers and say, I think we're doing it all wrong. We're showing the folios. That they're not interested in seeing the jobs. They're interested in seeing what makes you tick. So after a number of years and having a family, I started my own business when photographers started coming in and saying to me, can you help me do folios? So back in 2002, the first folio I designed of a friend of mine. I knew he was a beautiful photographer, but his folio was just all over the shop. And it was a really interesting time in Australia at that time, because a lot of companies were going abroad. And so work that was being done in Australia, especially in the food industry, was now being shot abroad, and there was a lot of stock photography being used. And photographers who had just kept ticking over with clients for years and years, they now all of a sudden had to work out how to promote themselves. So it was quite a different time. And so I was right in at that core going, come on, everyone, I can do your folios. And so that's where that part of my business started. So I design and do layout and work with photographers at all stages of their career to help build portfolios that turned into also websites, and also into helping curate exhibitions and what images are going to go into exhibitions as well. That's still a very big part of my business. I then moved into starting the creative directory, which is on the brownbilleffect.com. Shameless advertisement there.
And that's not a problem. We have no shame on this podcast.
Excellent. And that is where creatives at all stages of their career can have a listing on there. It's only $250 for the year, and it is another avenue for them to market themselves. So it's not just photographers, there's cinematographers and writers and designers and printers and bookbinders and all sorts of people and galleries that people just want another avenue and a new network. For the last really long time, over 25 years, I've been building this massive network in all areas of the creative world.
Mm-hmm.
The folio designing and website and curation of images and books is a big part of what I do. But then I also started to do recruitment into the creative industry as well, because it was just coming in the door. Everyone, do you know anyone that can work in my studio? Can you just help me do this? And so then I also started a series of consultations, which are only 2 hours long, where it's about career guidance. It's about looking at what you have, how you're presenting yourself, how your folio and or your website looks. If you need a CV, what to put into that. And it doesn't matter at what stage you are or what creative ilk you have. It's about inspiring and motivating people and making them feel the best that they can be and making them feel confident that what they've got, they can actually go to market and show. Because a lot of people, it's great, and we're talking specifically about photography today.
Sure.
It's really easy. The easy part of it is taking the pictures and being a really good photographer. But the understanding of the business side of photography is what is always lacked. And years of teaching at a variety of universities. I do a lot of guest lecturing now. I judge many awards, of which landscape has been a lot over the years. People always have that hesitation about understanding the business of photography and working on your business and how to promote yourself. And it's I'm there going, do you know what? You're not the only one. It is a tough gig. And what is your photography about? So in this instance, what is your landscape photography? Is it about feeding your soul while you have a full-time job?
Yep.
Or is it about you're wanting to exhibit your work and slowly move out of your full-time job? Are you wanting to retire and get into something else? There's all sorts of areas. Nothing shocks me anymore. I love meeting people. I get a huge inspiration about working with other people's imagery. I have no emotional attachment to it. So I'm very clear cut about what works and what doesn't and what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. I started an assistant register in addition to the creative directory. So people that are wanting to actually learn about business and work with other photographers, so they can be listed on there as an assistant. And then I do the consultations. I do full-time recruitment in the creative industry as well. And I've got a big freelance register.
Yep.
And just because I wasn't busy enough and I just love what I do, we talked earlier on about you starting this podcast to keep you together in COVID. I wrote a book. The book is How to Develop Your Career as a Photographer. And it's not how to take a picture, but it's about, and we can talk about this a bit later, it all came about with a very dear friend of mine, Rick Wallace, who passed away in COVID. He was my mentor and I assisted him. And before we went into lockdown, he said, what are you going to do if you go into lockdown? And I said, I'm going to write a bloody book. I love writing. I love talking. I've got lots to say.
Yep.
I love inspiring people. And he said to me, if you write a book, you've got to dedicate it to me because I taught you everything you know. So the opening page is a dedication to Rick.
Fantastic.
And it really, do you know what? He died about 2 weeks after that. Just
wow.
Hideous things, not of COVID. And I thought, shit, I better put my money where my mouth is. And I did it. And I'm so proud of it. And it is all about what he taught me in a lifetime of working and motivation and inspiration and about networking and not in an ugly way, in a really beautiful, positive, let's make it a community and let's make everybody enjoy, bounce out of bed and get into photography way.
Having read the ebook, I can certainly recommend it to anybody that wants to either start or is going already down the path of becoming a professional photographer, whether that's in product or portrait or wedding or even landscape photography.
Yeah, everything in there is it's generic. It's not
generic,
about,
yeah. And
it's not about a specific kind of photography. It's about a state.
Absolutely. And what it does is it makes it really clear that you've got to wear a lot of hats when you're starting your own business. You're the CEO, you're the chief marketing officer, you're the chief cook and bottle wash and janitor
Oh,
and
yeah,
all the rest of
yeah.
that.
And you change the toilet rolls.
Yep,
You've got to move
exactly.
your car. You do your own invoicing. It's
Yep.
everything. And it's a lot, because especially if you're coming out of studying, all you have to worry about when you're studying is like, my project's due in 2 weeks' time. And mostly you shoot it the day before when you're a student, and money's involved or other people are involved. It's very rare in any kind of photography that you are on your own. You may shoot on your own, but there's always either a publisher or a gallerist or an art director or a designer or a printer or somebody else involved. So it's about communication as well, hugely about communication.
So I want to take you back a little bit to the beginning and the genesis of the Brownbill Effect. What made you decide to actually start? What was the point where you said, I can do this, I'm going to actually kick it off and do it? Because a lot of people say, I'd like to own my own business and so forth, and they talk about it sometimes more than they should, but very few people actually make that leap. What was it like to make that leap for you? I'm just interested in the emotions that were going on and the things that you were thinking about when you first started.
Yeah, it's a really lovely question, Grant. So there's the two parts to the Brownbill Effect. The first part was the portfolio, deciding to make a living out of doing portfolios. And that was, I'd been in a design studio and photographers would come in and show me folios that I would show the design studio. And I would say, I said to this particular guy, I can't show you this. There's a squashed moth on the front page. And I know your work is so much better than this. And it's stuck in with bloody masking tape. I can't show this. Yeah. And he said, what would you do? And I said, I don't know, but I know that they would love you working for them. He was a food photographer. And I'm coming over and we're going to work it out. Print all your stuff out and we're going to lay it all out. And that's how it literally started. And I thought, gee, I love this because I get my creative on when I'm doing it. He got an enormous amount out of the experience. And then he told somebody whose folio I then did, and then they told somebody else, and it just grew. And I stayed in the design studio until it got to a point where there wasn't enough days in the week and I was a young mum. And I said to my husband, I think if I hit the accelerator, this is just going to explode. Are we in a financial position for me to do that? Or do I need this constant working in the design studio and teaching element? And we bought a house, we had a young family, and he just said, no, I reckon we can do it. It might be tight for a few years. And so that was my catalyst. And I knew that I was an incredibly good organizer because my job in the design studio had been to manage time management and organize and show folios and things. Sure. So I knew that I was really disciplined. I knew that I knew my subject really well. I went and got advice from our accountant. I set myself up. I spoke to a designer about a logo, which he came up with the mouth, which you'll see on my logo originally, because he just, again, it never shuts up. And I always wear red lipstick. And I thought, I work from home. We have a mezzanine upstairs. So I worked from home. So I was really growing up about it. I was really sensible. I didn't put on lots of staff. And I just went out and I allowed word of mouth to run it. After a year or so, I got a website. I was still at university teaching, and I then started doing some guest lectures at other universities. So my network started to know what I was doing, and it started to build. And then the idea of moving. So that was a really important part to the Brownbill Effect, was having the confidence that I knew what I was doing and that I had a network that I had built back in the mid-90s whilst I was being an agent for photographers, which was a completely different area. And I really loved people. And I thought, this is going to be it. And so whilst I then was out showing folios to designers and art directors and pulling jobs in and saying, we need a stylist here and a makeup artist and we need studios, doing all of that, a couple of people from the creative industry and photographers, interestingly, creative industry and photographers, they said, you should start some sort of a listing or something where people can go. And so they came to me with this idea, and I said to my husband, what do you reckon? And we spoke to another friend that was pretty good in business. And how would we set this up? And I knew a great web designer, and I loved my graphic designer, and we all got together and we built the first creative directory. And then in addition to that, the assistant register came on. And it was at that time that I was still doing the folios, the creative directory and the assistant register, that the industry started ringing me going, listen, we know you're expanding. Would it expand to helping us find full-time staff? And I just went, yeah, not really knowing a whole lot about it. And then realizing I then had to go to a lawyer. I then had to get terms and conditions and understand all that. So I went on a massive business learning curve myself. Like I often say, I'm not a businesswoman's belly button, but I've got lots of great people around me that I ring and go, shit, what do I do here? So I was smart about it because I was a bit older and I'd seen a lot of businesses go down the tubes. And so that was the catalyst for why I did it. And the reason I still do it after. And so that was in 2012 that we built that, and I launched it early 2013. And so this is our 10th year. So it's a really nice time to be talking about it. That was the catalyst for it to start. And the reason I still do it is because I love every minute of it. Every day I bounce out of bed, something completely different is happening. I'm dealing a lot with photography. I wrote the book. I'm just writing my second book now. That I hope to be released towards the end of the year. And it's about creativity in general.
Fantastic.
So it's not photography specific. It's about, it's okay at any stage in your life to be creative. And what do we need to allow yourself to do that? And I'm having that illustrated. And so it's about challenges. It's about the challenge of change. It's about life is here to be lived. And I think many people that I deal with have gone into other careers because they were really smart at school. So they're teachers, and parents said, you got to do law, or you got to do medicine, or you can't be a photographer. Whereas my parents were always so, wow, your photos are beautiful. Are you going to do photography? And I went, God, maybe. And I just loved the support and encouragement that I had. So I feel it my duty to support and encourage anybody in their creative pursuits, whether they decide they want to write a book or become an art director or move across from photography into this. So I just love people, and I love making people the best that they can be. And I'm fortunate to be surrounded by so many great people myself, and asking people to be involved in projects. And it's great. God, we could all be accountants, right? We could all be sitting in a desk with that.
And as you pointed out earlier, it doesn't matter what stage in your life you are, you can be creative, whether you're a 5-year-old with a crayon in their hand all the way up until you're a 95-year-old with a crayon in their hand.
Do you know what? My dad is nearly 94, and he changed careers, went back to university at 50, and at 60, he went into a whole new career. And he's only recently just slowed right down.
Wow.
I know where I get it from, right?
Fair enough. So what motivates you creatively?
Other people motivate me creatively. I get really inspired by working with other people, even if they're not great at what they do. My creative really gets on when I can go, oh, there's not a lot going on here. How can I help them be creative? That's really, really important for me. I have a place down at the beach, or we have a place down at the Great Ocean Road, and that inspires me. I just go for lots of really long walks in any weather, and I feel it's my place of just utter peace and just clear-headedness. I think that's important. I love movies. Movies are huge, and I'm a huge reader. I read a lot, and I don't necessarily read highbrow books. I'll read, give me a good rom-com, give me anything. I just enjoy visual stimulation, and I love listening to music as well. My husband plays the guitar, and music's really good. But mostly it's other people, and working so much in universities with students too, because the older you get, the younger the people that work with me now are, because they know so much that I don't know. So I'm the first person to go, God, that's a new word. I haven't heard that. Or what does that mean? Or what do you mean Facebook's changed? What do I got to do now? Or what's what's going on? Somebody sent me this. How do I download this? So that's a great thing. Young people really inspire me, or they go, hey, can I show you a shortcut on the computer? And I go, yes. But so it's not all about me telling people how to do things. It's a lot about me learning from others around me. And I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah.
And my dog, who you're about to see, she's trying to jump on my lap. So that's why I'm doing it.
That's okay. We're dog friendly here.
It's all right. Off you go.
What's the most common problem that a client would come to you with?
A photographer?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's many. But I guess the most common one would be that they're a bit lost in their journey in photography. That they're just not sure. Like, it could be that they don't know how to go from where they are now to get. I worked with a guy yesterday and he's got an okay career, but he wants to go to that next level. And how do you do it?
Yeah.
Or I have somebody I worked with a couple of weeks ago had just so many images for their website that they just couldn't. They'd narrowed it down from 400 to 250, but we really only wanted 50. And they had such emotion. They have such emotional attachment to their work. Like one guy I remember many years ago, I was looking at his work and I said, let's go. And he goes, no, that stays in because that's the day I fell in love with my wife. She was the model and it was the best day of my life. And I said, and it looks terrible in your folio. So take it out and put it in a frame and stick it next to your bed.
Because nobody else is going to care.
Yeah. Because we don't actually care because it looks like it was shot in 1975. Yeah,
right.
And so it's the cold hearth truth, but I do it in a nice, positive way. But people, they're actually, the man I was working with yesterday, he was actually, he was just sitting there like this. And I kept saying, are you okay? And he goes, I'm here for this. Keep going. So I will never say to anybody your work's terrible, leave. I will say, wow, even if it's only the cover that's good or something, I'll just always find something positive and say, so how we could probably do this. And so they would be the two major things. The other thing is, I think people have, it's very hard to be very critical of your own work.
Yep.
And so somebody might have done a shoot where there's 15 great shots and we really only want 3 or 4 in a folio because we don't want to be bored and think that's the only thing. And they just can't pick between them. So that's a popular one that people will come and work with me on. But mostly it's about, I'm not sure where to from here. What is the market like at the moment? How do I present myself now? Like I haven't had to show folios for, they might say, for years because I've had regular clients. Now they've gone. Do I have a printed one? Do I have an online one? Do I do a website? So there's all sorts of things right down to, I don't know if this is for me anymore. Do you think it's a viable career?
Yeah.
Can I get a full-time job in photography? How do I also love retouching in photography. A lot of people will come to me with 2 skill sets, like designer and photographer, or retoucher and photographer, and how do I best present myself? And so you've got to be very careful about that.
Yeah, and your resume for each, if you're applying for a job, for example, or when you're putting a portfolio forward, they're going to be very different because people in those industries are going to be looking for very different things.
Yeah, and how to tailor yourself. And the other thing is, and this is not just photography, a lot of people come to me because they have so many different skills and they don't know how to talk about it. So they feel like they're a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
And so it's about, and that could be photographing everything from landscape, cars, fashion and product, right through to being a designer, an illustrator, also a videographer and a photographer. You can't confuse people. You have to be we are in a world of communication. So it's about, how do I talk about myself clearly? How do I articulate what I want to do and work through that with them? So it might be, right, design is really your main thing. So we're going to call you a designer, but your additional skill sets will be photography. And
yeah, you can have multiple niches into which you fit, but you've got to have that main focus, which is how you describe.
And especially with photography, because Europe is quite different, where they specialize in one thing, like really niche. It could be, I just photograph orange bottles, right?
Yep.
Whereas in Melbourne, especially, and Australia, but especially Melbourne, we can identify with photographers that have a style that takes us across, like lifestyle photography, that can take us into portraiture and buildings and food, for instance. And
yeah, well, there's a lot of commonalities between, say, landscape and travel, for example.
absolutely. And then when I work with landscape photographers or documentary photographers and they're looking at trying to get commercial work, we have to be really careful about the imagery that we pick, because what we don't want is somebody looking at this beautiful work of Grant Swinburne's and going, oh God, yeah, when I was in Bali, I've got a shot just like that.
Yeah, so that's right.
I am always talking about what is your point of difference. And so travel photography is a really interesting one, because many people that go to Bali or Italy or France are looking at the same stuff, but what is it that you've seen? Is it a nighttime photography, or have you just photographed people's feet?
Have you made that your own? And
what is your point of difference? And yeah, that is a great shot of the Eiffel Tower, but I've seen that 40 million times, and I'm not putting that in your folio again.
Yeah,
put it in a frame and stick it on your wall.
Do you set creative challenges for any of you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. It's really important, especially when designing a layout for a website or a portfolio, because if we make a decision that we're going to have a title that says landscape or product or whatever it might be, and we've got 10 in one and 50 in the other, it's like we actually need to shoot more products. So why don't we go out and let's have a discussion. What do you like? Glassware. Glassware's great. Fruit bowls. I'm just going around my house at the moment. And that's the educator in me, helping them to decipher what it is that they're lacking in their bodies of work, and not doing it for them, but giving them really good ideas and a brief to go out to shoot, because so many people just need that. When they're lost, they need to be told what to do, or here is a brief, go out and you imagine it and how could it be. It's important, because
absolutely,
sometimes it's just so nice. We grow up our whole life when we're at school with the bell ringing, telling us that time to go to the toilet, time to eat lunch, time to go home. And then you're thrown out into the world and it's, wow, I've actually just got to run this all on my own. And
work out where I got to be when I got to.
A lot of the time we all just get overwhelmed and go, I just don't want to have to think. I just want somebody to tell me, what am I doing? And boy, do I love doing that.
Certainly sounds like it. What about photographers setting goals for themselves? What advice do you have for people? And there's photographers I've spoken to that don't do that, but there's a lot of photographers that I know do actually set themselves goals and projects, and they're not always the professional ones either. Sometimes it's people that are just doing it as a hobby or as a weekend pastime. What advice for both sides of that, or both ends of that spectrum, can you give?
I think setting goals, realistic goals, is hugely important, because otherwise you're just floating around. You're just going, whoa, I'm just going to take this. You have to have an element of the fork in the road. Wow, I thought I was heading there, but actually this is a good opportunity. So you have to be open to changing and opportunities. But goals are hugely important, but realistic, as I said. And what I mean by that is I will have somebody come and see me in October and say, I need a new website. I want to do a new folio with you, and I want to have an exhibition, and I'd like to do it all in December. And I'll say, which December? Not 2 months' time, December. And they go, yeah, do you think we can? I go, no, we can't. No, that's not going to work. So timelines are hugely important in photography. So on the both spectrums, if you've currently got a full-time job and this is your hobby on the weekend, your photography is actually about feeding your soul. So you don't want it to be a stressful thing. You want it to be a realistic achievement. You also don't want to ruin your family or your partnerships or your job. You want it to be an enjoyable thing. So allow yourself enough time and go, right, I've got 3 months to shoot, and I'm going to shoot every Saturday morning and every second all day Sunday, and I'm going to take my kids with me on that day, or my partner, or whatever it might be, or I'm going out on my own. Let everybody in your world know what you're doing, and then say, by the end of 3 months, I'm then going to collate my imagery. I'm then going to find somewhere to exhibit it, or a book, whatever. So you have a plan and a timeline. My new book now, we did a timeline last week. and you work backwards. Like, I'd like to have an exhibition then, and you work backwards, because it's about having with photography, it's important to have a goal, because there's no right or wrong, and there's no end to it, and you are always improving. So you do this exhibition first, and then you go, right, that was fantastic. I can't wait for my next exhibition in 2 years. And then you see what you've improved on, or you're going to go down a different rabbit hole. And so that's what's really important. And with a commercial at the other end of the spectrum, having goals is really important, because if you are a commercial photographer, you are running to other people's deadlines, and people are changing on you all the time, and there's weather dependent, and I couldn't do it.
Brief can change, all sorts of things.
Like us today, we had a time set, and then it all went to hell in a handbag, and then we had to reschedule, and we went, okay, and now here we are. But you've got to be fluid within what you're doing. You can get cheesed off, and you can do all those sort of things, but that's the nature of running your own business. There's ebbs and flows. There is feast and famine. If I could come up with any more analogies, I would. So a realistic goal of, right, I am busy shooting architecture the whole time, but my goal of photographing the ocean at different times of the day is my goal. And my goal is to shoot 3 new images a month.
Yep.
And I can easily do it on the way home from work. I'm going to do it at sunsets. I'm going to do dawns. And get your calendar. Your best friend is a great big calendar on your wall. And you let your family know, again, saying, where's dad? Where's mum? What are they doing? They're shooting. And then once you start doing it, then you realistically go, this is looking fantastic. Who am I going to invite? Where am I going to have it? Am I going to have it at the local yacht club, or am I going to a restaurant down at the seaside?
Yep.
And so all of those goals, but you're not putting pressure on yourself to do it all at once, or find a place that you've got to lock into on the 1st of July and you haven't shot anything.
Yeah.
Once you get your first exhibition out of the way, I'm referring to an exhibition, for instance, you can travel with that. You can use that exhibition in lots of places and enter awards. You can do all sorts of things. But goals are hugely important, because otherwise you become one of those, I'm going to do it. And you asked me about my business, what inspired me to do it. This was in many questions ago. And one of the things that's happened to me a number of times over the years. So many people have said to me, oh, I had that idea. That was my idea.
I was going to do that.
And I said, but you didn't, because I'm just like, it's about having a conviction. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Like,
make a commitment, whether it's to somebody else or to yourself. Yeah.
And photography is very much about that. It's like exercise. It's like owning a dog. It's a commitment. But it shouldn't be a stressful commitment. It should be a well-planned. You think about any shoot that you do, it's landscape. Let's say you're going to go into the middle of the Tasmanian bush. Yep. You've got enough water, enough food, warm clothing. Everything's planned before the shoot, and off you go. That's what this is all about, making it an enjoyable experience.
Absolutely. What role do you think personal expression plays, but in particular in landscape photography, and how do you encourage your clients to infuse their own style and vision into their images?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important, because you are the only point of difference between you and the next photographer. How you see things, how you feel things, how you present things. We can all be landscape photographers. We've all done landscape photography, but what is your point of difference? Is it the fact that you always include a person in it? Is it the fact that you always shoot looking up, or all your images are horizontal? Or is it the fact that you only shoot at a certain time of day? Having a point of difference is crucial to create a style and for other people to be interested in what it is that you do. So if I'm a buyer of art, or if I'm a purchaser of a photographer to shoot for Destination Victoria or something like that, I can look at lots of different photographers, but the one I'm going to pick is the one that has that personal expression in it, that has a point of difference, because there's no point in me changing from the person I'm currently using if I'm just going to get the same sort of work.
Absolutely.
And that can grow. You might not know what it is for a long time, but Photography is about trial and error. There's no right or wrong. And you can never second guess what somebody wants either. So it's really important to feel confident with who you are and what your expression is. I was dealing with a guy, I can't remember, maybe Monday, and he was up in New South Wales, and he is all about documenting the logging of forests.
Yep.
And that was what the 2 hours was about. And I just said, everybody in documentary and landscape photography has done it.
Yep.
Doing it. So what is your point of difference? Is it the community around there? Is it the people? Is it what's left behind? Is it what it's like before? There needs to be an angle. Why are you wanting to do it?
Yeah.
Not looking at, wow, that's fantastic, I'm going to go up and shoot it. That's great. But I feel really empowered to do this because I want to tell the story of the people whose lives it's affecting, or whatever it might be. So hugely important is the answer to that.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Where you the trial and error, and to me that says, okay, well, you've kind of got to go and take some risks, and one of those risks that you're going to come back with images or whatever. How do you help people when they're trying to learn from failure and setbacks?
I lie them down on a couch and I
pour wine down their throat.
Yeah, and I just go, open up. No, look, that's a life thing. I think if you
definitely, yeah.
I grew up shooting a Hasselblad with 12 frames,
and
even my daughter now, when we're shooting, when kids take a photo, they go bang, bang, and there's 50 pictures. I'll just go out and bang, got it, and they'll go, no, you got to do more, and I say, no, I don't. I got it on the first.
I nailed it. Yeah,
a degree, for God's sake. It's about allowing yourself to fail, and I think it's a life lesson as well. There's plenty of things in business that I've cocked up and I've just gone, wow, and I burst into tears, and then I go, okay, I'm not going to do that again. Photography is about trial and error. If life was that simple, everything that we did would work out, and it doesn't. And sometimes the most wonderful, I remember many years ago on my Hasselblad, it was an ELM, 500 ELM, I've still got it, it's an automatic one, and I put some film in it. I was photographing a friend of mine, and the battery started to run down. So when I shot it, the frame slid up. So when I processed it, her face was there, but it just went through with this white swoosh up.
Yeah.
The light the pin light had gone into the lens. I don't know what had happened. And they were just like the best mistake I've ever made. And this was before Photoshop or anything.
Sure.
And the lecturers are going, how did you do it? And I went, the battery was running down. And I just kept on going, thinking this will work. So it is frustrating. It's like, I don't know if you play golf. Like my husband plays golf, and I was just taken up trying to take up.
I haven't had a round for a long time,
right.
but
So
I used to play a bit.
Did you? So I'm a tennis player. I took up golf for 3 minutes because the first 2 shots I thought I was off to the national, right? I was great. And the next 4 days, I nearly broke my neck jarring it, hitting the ground. I couldn't. And it's as frustrating as hell, but are you committed to it?
Yeah.
I'm probably not at the moment. Maybe in a few years I might be, but with photography, are you committed to it? It's what did I learn from that? Shivers, I'm not going to do that again. And also, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen. This could be really cool. Cover your ass. Whenever we're photographed, I cut my teeth on shooting weddings at the very beginning. It's how I got to travel for so long. Now, you can't stuff up a wedding, right? Because you can't reshoot that. And that was incredibly stressful. And I just shot, am I allowed to say shit? I'm doing it. I just shot the shit out of them. I had 5 cameras and I shoot, and most of them were okay. And thank God that camera didn't even roll on. So just forget about them. And it's about an expression of interest. It is a direct relationship to your mood and how you are. And just some days you can't make yourself creative.
Yeah.
If you don't feel it, don't pick your camera up. Like, actually, if you're traveling and you're doing travel photography or landscape and you're going out and the light's crappy, or you've had a terrible sleep, or you've got a headache or a sore tooth, or just go out and experience it and start thinking about, if I bring my camera back out, what's this going to be like? Or just don't take it out of your bag. That's okay too.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important, to allow yourself to have the stuff ups.
Totally. I think one of the most important lessons I learned in photography was I've killed a few cameras, and usually it's because I've put myself in the wrong place at the wrong time, where the weather and whatever isn't quite right. And that experience of literally total failure of the camera, lucky enough to maybe salvage one or two images that I might have taken before the thing died, dealing with the disappointment of that. Yeah, I'm angry at myself for being in the wrong spot at the wrong time. Yeah, I'm angry at myself for not finishing the shoot and getting what I wanted out of it. But it's about then saying, okay, I'll just go back there at the right time, check the tides, make sure I don't stand in that spot, and do it again. And it's about building that resilience and the ability to look at the failures and go, okay, well, that was a failure, forget about it.
Absolutely. And what we are as photographers, we're actually problem solvers.
Totally.
And so you get somewhere, and in a commercial sense, I remember doing a shoot once of a very important person, and I had to photograph her at a house, and I got there and my Manfrotto tripod just broke, but it was really low light. I had to have a tripod, and I just thought, what am I going to do? Like, this woman was like so important. She was giving me 30 seconds of her time, but she had a coffee table with all these books, and I just put all the books and I stuck the camera on top of it. But you have to you got to go with the flow a little bit.
Yeah, you got to roll with the punches.
You got to roll with the punches. And you ask people, like, if you're shooting portraits or weddings in people's houses, if you got a lot of natural light, they go, yeah, there's heaps of natural light, and it's heaps of PowerPoints, and you get there, no PowerPoints.
Yeah, it's a cave.
All the windows are shaded. There's natural light in the morning. I'm there in the afternoon, and you're just there going. So recce's are really good. Again, being prepared, but just dealing with it, and also being able to talk about it if money's involved or clients are involved, and just explaining, look, this isn't working today.
Yeah.
It's not a great thing, but hopefully all of your preparation's done beforehand.
Not going to work at a wedding, as you said, but for other shoots, you can sometimes angle your way out of it.
You do have to, life can be disappointing. There's all sorts of things that happen, and everyone deals with it really differently, but it's okay. It's okay to stuff up.
You mentioned earlier on, quite a few questions ago, about how you've used some of your uni students to teach you new things. How do you stay up to date with new ideas and techniques in photography?
I listen a lot. Like, I talk a lot, but I listen a lot and I read a lot. But mostly it's through being involved in universities. So I'm involved with all sorts of universities across Australia, and not just photography, but in design and advertising and marketing. I talk to the lecturers. I listen to what the students are doing. I have an intern that works with me each year. So I pick an honours design student intern each year, and they work from January to December, and we work on all sorts of projects and listening to current trends. When TikTok came out, it's, oh my God, I ignored it for a long time. And then she said to me, go on, it'd be really fun. Are you funny? You can do TikTok, and we want to appeal to people like me. And so I started a TikTok account. Really? Did I actually do that?
I can promise you I'm never doing that.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't my audience. So understanding, but also enjoying it. It's a bit of fun. So I have
absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. A writer that works with me, and we come up with all these fun ideas, and we do silly things and campaigns, but it's all relative. And I think you're as old as you feel, or you're as young as you feel. I don't feel any different to when I was 21. I think it's not all good, let me tell you. But yeah, I listen a lot. I'm really open to, I go to a lot of exhibitions and book launches. I talk to lots of different people. In my newsletter that everybody can subscribe to, it's a free newsletter that you can subscribe through the brownbilleffect.com. I have a conversation every month with somebody that I really admire in the industry, and it could be from the video industry, photography. I've worked with some amazing world famous photographers out of America who are doing some really cool stuff, that have worked for the New York Times and the Washington Post, that have been into Afghanistan, that have run amazing exhibitions. All of them are on there. You can have a look at that in my conversations on the website. There's a plethora of extraordinary people that I get to meet, and they inspire me and teach me new stuff.
Excellent.
I never stop. You never stop learning. I never stop learning.
Yeah. Anyone that's stopped learning, I think, has stopped living.
I'm even learning pottery at the moment because
wonderful.
I'm on a spinning wheel. Do you know why? I just wanted the phone away from me. I didn't want to be looking at there, and I just wanted to get. I'm really enjoying it. It's 3 hours a week, and it's just
awesome.
Yeah, I'm never going to be a famous potter, but I'm going to be able to have something to put olives in soon, so that's good.
Excellent. You mentioned the creative register as being an important part of the business. How does that register work? And I guess what's the most important thing you're looking for when connecting creatives?
It's the creative directory and the assistant register.
Okay.
The most important thing with connecting creatives is about personality. I'm a matchmaker.
Yep.
That's really what I'm doing, whether I'm putting somebody into a full-time role or a freelance role, or you ring me and say, I need an assistant and a producer on this job. I want to work with a gallery. It's about making sure that I understand who the individuals are and what their personality traits are, because that's huge. It's all about getting on with people. And we don't want two people that are going to butt heads, or two really shy people. Or do we want two really shy people because there's a third person that's not? So personality, obviously skill sets are hugely important, but not as important as personality when I'm matching people. Yep. The skill set's also about, if we're putting two people together, we don't want them to have the same skill set. I want this person to be able to do this and this person to be able to do that.
They've got to be complementary and bring together different aspects. Yeah.
So that's really important. And same with the assistant register. People will ring me, and one guy rang me and he goes, me, Sal, I've got a job. It's in Tassie. We're camping. I snore. We're going to be up at dawn. I just need somebody that's tough that can handle it. And it's obviously you have to be a guy because I'm a guy and we're sharing a tent. Really practical stuff like that. And I just think, yeah, okay. We can't have any people that don't like camping or that don't like getting up early. So it's about matching the skill sets at that given time on what that project might be.
One of the pieces of advice I've read on your website is about whether or not a photographer should work for free as a photographer. Should they give their work away? And I know it can be sometimes a bit of a hot topic. You see a lot of people, I know quite a few people complaining about on various social media about people that are losing work to people that are doing it for nothing or at such a low ball price that they can't compete. What's your advice on that?
My advice is that you never, ever shoot anything for free if other people are being paid on the same project. So if you came to me and said, look, Sally, I'm doing a love project for the Heart Foundation because my father died of heart disease. It's a really special project. I'd love an assistant to work and a stylist or a model or whatever it might be. None of us are getting paid. It's on a weekend. Do you know anyone that would feel comfortable to do that? That is okay to do that. But if everyone else is being paid on the shoot and somebody, or it's an agency or a company and the art director's being paid and the company and everybody else is being paid, and they go, we're going to give this photographer a chance because they're starting out and we don't have any budget to pay you, forget it. It's not appropriate. You're giving your skill and your time. So how I look at jobs is I look at every single job uniquely and differently. And just because that job I worked for Grant for free because it was for the Heart Foundation, and the next job he rings me and he says, look, now I'm saving animals and would you do another job for free? You make that decision. You don't want to be Grant's go-to photographer. So what I would encourage this photographer to do would say, Grant, I'd love to do this. Yep, the heart thing is really great. It'd be great if you flicked me a real job at some point too. You have to feel confident about your conversation. You do need to feel confident about what your value and your worth is. But you don't give away your IP, you know.
Definitely. I actually have a very good friend who does some photography. I'm not going to say what genre because it might actually pin who it is. But the organisation he's been working with for quite some years has, I think, been taking him for a ride because he hasn't been paid for any of it. And it's not as it's not the sort of organisation like a heart foundation or a cancer care foundation or whatever. It's actually a business. And I've just given him similar advice. Just, you really need to have that conversation with them about the value of your work and your time.
But you've also got to take ownership of allowing that to happen in your life too.
Absolutely.
It's like people in bad relationships. You've actually allowed that person to treat you really badly. And you can do it for a very short period of time, but then you go, come on, mate, I've done a lot of jobs for you for free. I just actually can't afford to do that anymore. And I've had to. So your mate, he has to own that and go, look, I've created this monster. I've said, yeah, because he's been excited to do some photography.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why he got into it. He loves what he does.
Yeah. And he loves what he does. And so he either has to own it and go, okay, based on me doing all this free photography for them, I'm going to turn it into a book. I'm actually going to make something out of it now, or I'm going to turn it into an exhibition, or this is just my soul. I don't need money. I'm not worried about it. I'm earning money somewhere else. It's a personal journey for him, but it's certainly, people will take, it's human nature. People take advantage of you if you do good deeds. So
definitely.
The thing called boundaries, and you have to have these boundaries with clients and friendships. Contra deals are okay. A designer might say, listen, I've got a really terrible budget for this, but if you shoot this project for me, I'll rebrand you, or I'll design your website. And then you go, that works.
Yeah, yeah. But you usually find those sorts of things are one or two offs. It'll be a tit for tat. You do this, I'll do that. And
next time, I'd like to think that you hire me for a job and pay me properly.
I guess it just stresses the importance of communication.
Absolutely, it does. And having people around you, like my business manager and a lawyer that I have, I ring them often and just go, what do I do in this scenario? How do I deal with it? Just so you've got your ducks in a row, you know what the answer should be, you have the confidence to know that you're not going back in. Even things like companies saying, like my payment terms, if you consult with me, you pay me on the day. Yep. If I'm putting somebody in a company or an agency, it's 7 days. And sometimes they come back and go, well, sorry, our terms are 45. So I'm there going, okay, how do I get around that? Because mine are 7 days. And so my business manager will just write to them and say, we'd love to do the work for you, but I'm afraid our terms are 7 days. We're a small business. If you look at what's going on in small business Victoria at the moment.
And it's all about
cash flow. Yeah. And 45 days isn't going to cut it. And then they normally come back and go, okay. So you don't ask, you don't get, right? Yeah, totally. And that's what life is about. It's like when you're traveling. I spent many years traveling the world, and people would say, if ever you're in Germany, come and look me up. If ever, you'll be sorry you said that. What? In the last 30 years, we've had half the world come and stay with us here because I stayed with them there, and our kids are all traveling together now, and all that sort of stuff. So if you don't ask, you don't get. And you can never assume things either. I assume that this is going to work. You just ask the question. Like you don't, especially when it comes to money too. Like are you getting paid for that? I assume I am. Don't.
Yeah, not all the universities pay. Until you've either got a spit in a handshake that says you are, or a piece of paper.
And if you guest lecturing, which I do an enormous amount of at a huge variety of places, some unis pay really well, some don't pay at all. So you have to ask the question and then you make that decision. And I think I'm never going to retire on a guest lecture salary of an hour. Do I want to do it? Yeah, I do, because I really enjoy giving back. But if I can get paid, that's really nice too. So I know the unis that do and the unis that don't. And I don't distinguish between them because it's like my charity thing that I do. And I'm really like this today. I'm really enjoying this conversation. And you make those decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You talked about cash flow, one of the hardest things. You also mentioned the feast and famine that you go through with a photographer. How important do you think it is to have diversification in your income streams for a photographer?
I think when you're starting out, you have to do your research, right? So for me, when I started out, I taught 2 days a week. So no matter what happened with everything else, I knew that I had enough money to cover our mortgage and to feed us as part with my husband's salary. So I think what's really important is that you don't jump in too quickly and stress and panic, because that's the worst thing to be doing until you gather up a good network and a good base of clients. And it might be 2 or 3 clients. It might be one client that you lock in for 12 months and you're going to do a catalogue every month for that person that's going to cover all of your studio expenses or whatever it is. The other thing with invoicing is invoice every week. Don't wait until the end of the month, because if you're invoicing every week, that should be your plan. So every week money's coming in. That's really important as well. Have a great bookkeeper. I know all of these things cost money, but they cost you money if you don't have them as well. And if you're no good at doing books, or if you get confused, have a great system. I'm on.
Yeah. You don't want the tax man knocking on the door saying, "Where's my money?" Yeah.
So Xero is like really a fantastic program for creatives, and it's easy. And I'm out, I photograph a receipt and I email it, and off it goes in there, and I chuck it away, and it's great, that's done. So be smart about it. And I've forgotten the question. I went off on a tangent.
Diversity in income streams.
Oh, yeah. So don't jump into it unless you've got something. You might have a partner or a parent or a kid that can support you for a period of time.
Yep.
But yeah, it's about building a network and feeling confident. And it's also, even when you're at your busiest, you've still got to be promoting yourself. So if you start following the Brownbill Effect.com on Instagram or Facebook, Sally Brownbill on LinkedIn, you'll see that I'm promoting myself all the time. Even when I'm as busy as a crazy mouse on a wheel, there's always promotion, so that I'm always busy. Because the big thing that especially photographers do is they get really busy, and then it goes really quiet around December, January, and everybody's really quiet, and everybody really panics, and everybody's out looking for work. And people go, "God, you're about the 15th photographer that I've spoken to today." Quiet out there. Whereas if you were just constantly hammering away, and we can do that now, especially with social media, we can pre-post,
you can schedule
phone
posts,
call, email, we can drop in, we can do all sorts of things.
One of the most difficult conversations that comes up is that around how you price your work. And that's both if you're doing pricing work for where you're actually going to go and do either a workshop, or you're going to do a shoot for somebody, but also if you're going to print your own, try and sell your own prints, or even a book. How do you talk to your clients about how they actually structure their pricing?
It's again, unfortunately, photography is one of those things which is, how long's a piece of string?
I know. That's why it's a challenging conversation sometimes.
It is. I've had advertising agencies in Melbourne book a Sydney photographer and be happy to pay $4,000 for them. And it's fallen through, and they'll ring me and go, "Shit, we need somebody down here in Melbourne." And I'll find them someone, and then I'll say, "Okay, so you were paying Grant $4,000, so this one's $4,000. I'm not paying $4,000 for a Melbourne photographer." "What do you mean?" "Probably a better photographer than the Sydney photographer. They're more expensive up in Sydney, but they're not in Melbourne, but they're not better." So there's a real
different places have different markets. Absolutely.
Yes, money is always a tough thing to talk about, but you do your research, you understand the value of who you are, how long you've been shooting. If it's exhibition pieces that you're looking at selling, go to a lot of exhibitions, have a look at the sizes, look at the sort of stuff that they're doing. It's about research. It's really easy to research these days.
Absolutely.
The first question, as I said to you in a previous question, an answer that I said was, look at if it's a job, you look at every single job individually. The first question that I will always ask when a job comes in is, do you have a budget for this? It's really important to ask that, because if they do, they've got to tell you. So they might go, "Look, for photography, we've got $5,000, or photography, we've actually got about 1,800. And I'll go, "Right. So you want us to drive for a day, spend 2 days up there and drive back for 1,800? It's not going to happen." So my job then to problem solve, or a photographer's job to problem solve. But what we could do is, we don't have to drive to the snowy mountains. We can actually do it in the Dandenong Ranges, because they've got the same trees. It's an hour away. Yeah. So problem solving to fit in with the budget is really important, but you don't agree to do a job like that for 1,800 when you're going to be away from home for 3 days.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's about conversation, having the confidence to know your worth and to know what is right and what's wrong. It can also do on the flip side, because you can be listening to the job and thinking, I reckon it's probably about $2,000. And they go, yeah, my budget's $5,000. And you go, oh,
okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, I think I could. Yeah, I think I'll get them. Yeah, I think that should be okay. And you hang up and you go, whoa.
Yeah, I'll squeeze it in for that. Yeah.
I'll squeeze it in. So talking about, but some people will come back and go, look, we don't have a budget. We've never done this before. Or the guy that we used last time, he didn't really charge properly. Okay, what did he charge?
Yeah.
So ask as many questions as you can, know what your day rate is. And then you look at also, if it is a $2,000 budget, but it's an extraordinary opportunity to go up in a helicopter over Lake Eyre, they're going to put on dinner that night with a famous chef,
yep,
and you're not doing anything, you'd probably do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And they'd go, mate, thanks so much for helping us out. We'll make sure we'll give you a proper paying job next time.
Yeah.
So again, you look at every job. It was really big in the 80s and the 90s to have rate cards.
Yeah.
Cards are really good for you to know what your rate is for a full day, a half day, but every single...
know the value of your own time.
Correct. And what your studio hire is and how much your assistant's going to cost, etc. But every single job, as I have said 1,000 times, you must look at individually. And then you make that call. Are you really quiet? It's a bit like the plumber on a Sunday. If he doesn't want to work, but if you pay him double, he will.
Yeah. You ring him up on a Sunday night, you're going to get gouged. So
exactly. So you make a decision at the time. Wow, this is going to be great for my folio. This is a huge experience. I've always wanted to meet Jamie Oliver and eat his food. Yes, I'm coming. Or if, look, we really don't know. And you go, okay, what I'll do is I'll have a look at it. And you come back and you say, I suspect this is going to take 3 days. It's going to have 2 nights away. My day rate's this. You put it at the bottom, you add it all up, and then you say, here is my quote. I'd love to go through it with you. And if we need to adjust anything, we can have that conversation. So you just put it out there and they'll come back and they'll go, listen, it's come over a bit too much. And you go, okay, let's have a work. And they might say, you don't have to hire a car. You can drive with me. And you go, let's pull it down $2,000. And so again, it's about communication and it's about conversation, because at the end of the day, they've picked you because they want to work with you, not just because of your photography, but who you are as a person.
Yeah.
We want to try and make this work. The shitty thing that happens sometimes is you do get invited to quote on a lot of jobs as that second or third quote. We really want Grant to do it, but we've just actually for the client. And if you find that you are being rung on a fairly regular occasion to be that second or third quote and you never get it, it's just, you just want to leave that party and just say, look, that's so happy, but I can't quote.
What about when you're working with smaller businesses where they're obviously going to be working on very tight budgets and they're not likely to be in that $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 range?
And that's when you have your different rates. So you'll go, so back when I was shooting, I had a rate for design studios and a rate for advertising agencies.
Yeah.
And advertising agencies back then used to pay a lot more than design studios did. So again, it's about talking to them about budget. If you're dealing with small companies, you're really dealing with the person that owns the company. So it's
most likely, yeah.
Don't be frightened about it. They should not expect you to do it for free. They want to know what the worth is. But yeah, you're not going to charge them in most cases what you would charge a multinational company or a big advertising or design studio.
Absolutely. You've got to look at the scale of the company before you
absolutely you do. And also, not so much just that one job. It might be, like I said before, it might be a company that needs something shot every single month, or it might be shooting all their social media for the whole year, and it might add up to 20 grand over the whole year, which is school fees or something. I don't know. So look at it. I cannot stress more highly. Look at things individually. Find out what budgets are, how big companies are. It's like people say, oh, it's a not-for-profit. Look, I'm sorry, that's great, but people don't work for free for not-for-profits, and often they have good budgets.
That's right. Yeah.
Because they might do a suite of photography in a year that's going to last them 3 or 4 years.
That's right.
Pardon me.
You're right.
I'm sorry about that. Talk too much. What a shock.
A water break's always important.
I think so.
I want to ask about now is whether or not I want to ask, do you actually go out and take photos yourself?
There's this little thing that I've got called a phone, and I shoot a lot on my iPhone. Hope none of the universities are listening. No, I do. I'm shooting constantly. I'm still asked to do portraits, and I don't shoot commercially for anybody, but I will do a portrait because I love shooting people. That was my thing in architecture. But look, I think the best thing, I've got the best phone, the best camera on it. I'm about to go on a really nice holiday overseas, and I'm not taking a camera, and it's a bit like, whoa. Yeah, I do shoot. I'm a very visual person. My shooting is, it's a bit quirky, and I see things really differently. And yeah, I think it's really important that I do that. It's something that I love doing. I don't have really probably the confidence to go out with a huge big camera anymore. I've still got my Hasselblad, and a couple of years ago I did a whole series of family portraits, which were of our family and my husband's family, and they're everywhere at their homes, and that's really beautiful, and I enjoyed doing it. But I would never. I shot my last wedding probably about 15 years ago.
Right.
My daughter was the flower girl, and they asked me to shoot the wedding, and I loved it. I was really stressed leading up to it. I was flown over to England to photograph a friend's wedding as well, probably about the same time. And when I came back, I just went, it's just not worth it. I don't do it often enough to feel confident as I used to. And so I put my wedding shoes down at that point. Yeah, but yeah, I do shoot. I don't necessarily need to shoot with a big camera. My daughter's got a really beautiful camera. She's doing advertising at the moment. She's nearly finished, and I'll pick that up sometimes and have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, great. What's your most memorable experience in your photography career? Not so much the business after photography, or? Gosh,
I've got quite a lot. There was a time when I was a student, I was just about to graduate, and one of my best friends, who is now a TV director, she came from Broken Hill. And I went up there with her to photograph. She was doing a whole fashion series out in Silverton. And I went up with her to work out what I was going to photograph. And two really exciting things happened, because I was doing a lot of portraiture and architecture. And her dad was friends with Pro Hart. And because her dad owned the local barber. And he said, Sal, do you want to go and photograph the brushman of the bush? And I went, are you kidding me? So I was introduced to Pro Hart and Jack Absalom and all of those guys that were out of Broken Hill at that time. This is in the late 80s. And I spent days photographing all of them. That was a pretty extraordinary time. And after I left Pro Hart, he had one of his Bibles, which he was quite famous for, and he painted it for me and wrote Sally on it and gave it to me, which I've got framed.
Very cool.
That was down at the beach. And that was extraordinary. And on that same trip, a mate of her brother's or somebody worked in the iron ore mines, and they said, do you girls want to come down into the mines? And we just went, yeah. So we jumped into this lorry. So you go down in a shaft. I don't know if you've ever been in one. It's sort of all the light from all the different levels. It's black. Like, and we get down there. We get into the back of this truck, and we're just like right in the center of the earth. And we're driving down, and we've got white boiler suits on, and everyone else is in grey. And I said, why are we wearing white? And they said, so they don't swear in front of you because you're women, right? How fantastic is that? Like 1984 or something. And we get there, and they've got these literally like long cords that you pull, and the light goes on up the next place where you drive, and you pull it. And we drove past, and he pulled it, and we're in pitch darkness. And they were mucking around, and they were going, God, girls, there's no light here. I don't know what we're going to do. Is anyone who brought the lights on? And I'm sort of having my first panic attack, just going, what do we do?
Because it is dark, isn't it?
It is dark, man. It's like you can't see. And so they were just lovely, and they loved us girls, and they took us into all these great areas, and I got some extraordinary photography. And those two moments were like, if I didn't have a camera and I didn't do what I was doing, I would never have experienced that. Yeah. Rick and I did some pretty amazing jobs. He had one job for hotels, and we got in planes and we flew all over far north Queensland. And another job which I had on my own was working for a bus touring company, and I got on a bus and I literally went up to far north Queensland and camped with German tourists for doing photography for the travel brochures. And that was back in the day of film. So all my cameras were in my camera bags in cases. It was my mum's idea. And all of the film I had to keep in lead-contained bags that didn't get done. And some of those people I'm still in touch with. And yeah, so there's so many extraordinary experiences when you've got a camera in your hand and going behind at St. Paul's Cathedral, was it St. Paul's, going behind the organ, into the organ pipes to photograph that for, I can't even remember what it was for. That was when I was an assistant. And meeting famous people. Going on set, Rick got me to do some TV stills sometimes, and you just get to meet extraordinary people that do extraordinary things. And I don't think I would have ever done half of this, just hundreds of them that I wouldn't have done without a camera in my hand.
Yeah, fantastic. What about horror stories?
Plenty of those. My horror story as an assistant, can I tell you about that one?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is before retouching or anything. I was the assistant, I was Rick's assistant, and we had the white cyclorama that I'd painted. It was beautiful, and every day we painted it. And it was for a company that did pots and for flower pots and beautiful big urns and all of those sorts of things. And so every night at the end of the shoot, it'd be a big white cyc, and then they'd come in and we'd photograph them because they were going to deep etch them all. It was 5 days of shooting. It was huge. We had everything from wheelbarrows, and everything was coming in, and everything had to be spotless. And that was it. And on the last night, it was a wrap. It was all finished. It was fantastic. We opened up the beers and off we went, and we got shellacked. We ended up down on Chapel Street having dinner. There was the client, there was me, the photographer, everybody that was involved. It was this massive thing. And one of the girls was still back at the studio, and because it'd be before mobile phones, the studio phone had rung, and she just went, right, okay. So she ran down to the restaurant where we were, where she was meeting. So she goes, guys, the big boss has just rung to just say that there's 5 more products that haven't been photographed.
And you're all
that
hammered.
need to be done tomorrow. Right. And he's going to be at the studio at 7 in the morning because they've got to go to print at lunchtime. Nice. Right. And I am literally like 21 cross-eyed. I've had about 5,000 drinks, and we were all like that. And Rick turns to me and goes, "You're going to have to go back and paint the cyc." And I went, "What? I can't even walk." And he goes, "You're going to have to." Right. And they kept, and so I just went, oh, I got the keys. I was crying. I got all the way up there. I turned the bloody studio lights on. I went into the back and I stirred the pot of paint, and I painted the site, crying. And Dave, one of the other guys, had come up to see if I was okay about an hour and a half later. Thanks, guys. And he walked up, and I remember he's standing there, and he goes, "Oh, you're going to be in so much trouble." And I said, "Why? I painted the bloody thing." And I painted it pale blue, not white. I'd used the wrong tin of paint, all kinds of trouble. You can't even imagine. But Dave was lovely, and we got all the redheads on it. We dried it. I rang my mum and said, "I'm not coming home tonight, Mum, staying at the studio." We then painted it white, dried it, and it was all ready. And nobody knew any difference in the morning except for me with my bug eyes in the morning and just thinking, that is it. This is time I have to go travelling. So that was my biggest horror story as an assistant. And a friend of mine photographed a wedding, and he had a Mamiya, and he had about 6 different backs. He said, "I'm just going to run it really cleverly here." And he had a back with black and white in it, one with colour, one with infrared. He was real professional, and he was so organised. Anyway, shot the whole wedding and put the backs on, put another back on. He hadn't put any bloody film in it. None of them had film. So there's some horror stories, but do you know what? You just get on with it, don't you? Have a bit of a cry and just go, wow, okay, that wasn't good.
I ask every photographer this question. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
That everybody's a photographer. Oh, I think you've got a T-shirt that said that. The biggest challenge, there are so many challenges, but one of the biggest challenges is that everybody is a photographer now. And I was a photographer. We were, not me necessarily, but photographers were revered for their skills in the darkroom and how they printed things and the way they understood how light fell and what lenses that they would use. And we were specialists. We were like brain surgeons, because people go, wow, that's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, the technical aspects went way beyond just the...
Yeah, we didn't have to be educators, because we were the people that knew what to do. Yeah. And whereas now, most of our jobs as photographers are educating clients. Like, how can that be? I could do that, or my son did that, or...
Yeah.
Look, we're now just got in the back of our agency, we've got a little studio set up and we just shoot all of our own product. And that never used to happen. That is the challenge for photographers, that they are competing against non-photographers to shoot work. And it was a bit like when Instagram became hugely popular and companies wanted to work with photographers that had huge Instagram followings.
Yeah.
Now that's all cool, and I get that, because it was helping their product, and that's how influencers came, and there is certainly a place for that. But when it comes to really high skill levels of understanding the intricacies, you really do need a photographer that is able to perform those tasks, whether it be in the retouching stakes or trying to get it right in camera the first time and saving money rather than trying to splice it all together, or even if it is really solely for the photographer understanding the production values of a huge shoot.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who's really cool on Instagram and has 50,000 followers, it might end up being a complete schmozzle because they don't know how to direct talent, or they don't know how to get...
They don't know how to manage that scaled up
production.
Environment. Yeah.
So those sorts of things of it becoming watered down has been a huge problem. I was involved with, he's now passed also, a guy called Nadish, who brought out the first digital camera into the country. And I was his agent at the time, and my job was and he had stables at the back of Caulfield Racecourse. They were his studios. And my job was to bring the advertising and design and photography industry into evenings where I'd clack around in high heels with cheese and wine, and we talk about this camera. And it was huge. It took up a whole room. It had 3 filters on it, and it was... You could only use an incandescent light source, and it could only shoot product. And we'd be in there, and he'd be going, I'm telling you, within the next 5 years, these cameras will be the size of our hand. And they said, look, we need to travel, and we can't travel with these, and we do fashion, and is it really going to take off? That wasn't that long ago. So we have been through the challenges of educating everybody and understanding that digital didn't capture colour in fabrics as well as film did, and how does it get better, and how did the camera get smaller, and then we got phones and everything. So we are not adverse to challenge as photographers. We have just experienced so much. I've still got a darkroom at my dad's place, mum and dad's place, but having it watered down as it has been, because everybody shoots, I think is a real problem. I think it's great that people can do it, but at the same time, it's about getting back to what is your point of difference? Why should you use me or you as a commercial photographer or as a landscape photographer rather than my friend's son's girlfriend who's giving it a go, or she's got an Instagram following? So it's an education process. And I think that is probably the biggest challenge. People will always want to see photography. Photography books has become a huge thing. Exhibitions, world photo fairs. It has become part of the social structure of the masses photography. And it's where do you fit into it? There is no right or wrong, but it's then I fit into it here, and then I'm going to educate people around me on how I fit into it.
Yeah.
And my role in it personally is to make you be the best that you can be within that genre that you've selected, or that I help you identify is your selection.
Fantastic. What do you see as the future of photography?
I see that every photographer on the planet needs to read this book. Look, I would like to see that it goes full circle, and that people are starting to go back into darkrooms and shooting on large format camera and trying out film. It's already happening.
Yeah.
I think that would be really great for people to actually experience that and learn how to shoot in 10 frames. That would be really nice. Look, photography, design, advertising, marketing, commercialism is never going anywhere. It's just not. It will always be around in some form or another. I don't know, we might end up having cameras in our blooming, there's my dog, sorry about that, in our glasses. Who knows? I'm not a high-tech person, wouldn't.
Yeah, I think Google tried that and then people thought that's a bit creepy. So
it is very creepy. Look, I'm not into technology. I just think the future is photography is what we want it to be. We need to keep it, for those of us that are in it, we need to keep it alive and keep educating people and trialing new things and giving it a go. As I said, we have gone through, in my 30 years, I've just gone through so much change in photography, but I would like to see photographers not be lazy in the future. I think that's one of the biggest fears, that people we'll just shoot it and we'll fix it up later. I think I would personally like to see it get back to it becoming much more of a craft.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, cool. Are there any photographers, landscape photographers in particular, that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Oh, gosh, put me on the spot, Grant.
Just one or two.
I wish you'd asked me that before, because there's so many incredible people that I work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a list together for you, and I think fantastic. That we will, and I'll put some website links together, because I would feel awful if I mentioned a few people and not the ones that I want to mention. Yeah, I think I'm just going to let me just cogitate on that one for a minute, and I'll email you about that afterwards.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. I've got one more question, and it's one that's
easier than the last one.
It should be, but it is a very divisive issue that many photographers seem to fall either side of. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yes, and I also like beetroot in hamburgers.
Not a fan of the beetroot on a hamburger, but the pineapple on a pizza is just fine.
Pineapple on a pizza and mango in a salad.
Mango in a salad's fantastic.
Yeah, no, love it. And what a great question to end on.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your wisdom, Sally. It's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better and dig into what you're doing. You've mentioned the website a few times, so I normally ask where can people find your work, but I think they've heard that.
The brownbilleffect.com, and that's a BROWN, B for Betty, ILL. Yeah, so the brownbilleffect.com, everything's on there. If you want to book a consultation, if you want to read some of the great conversations that I've had over the years with people. Buy the book. If you want to buy the book, there's a hard copy and there's also an app. There's all sorts of things on there that you can go to. And I really thank you for inviting me as somebody that's not shooting landscape, but that can talk about photography until she's blue in the face. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show.
And if I come up to Sydney, let's go out and have a pizza with pineapple on it.
Sounds fantastic. Or a burger with...
beetroot.
You can have beetroot. I'll pass.
All right.
Thanks very much, Sally.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoy the show and keep listening, because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're interested in buying prints or photography gear or doing a photo workshop with me, these are on sale on my website. I'm Grant Swinburne. I hope to see you out shooting soon.